Hello, everyone. And if you're watching this, it probably means that you backed us on Kickstarter for A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, so thank you very much. We appreciate it. This is the Troublemaker live streaming Q&A. And if you're watching this, it probably means that
we're brand new at this. And if you're watching this and you didn't back us,
so thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Guys, hold on, let me do it.
Hang on. Okay, now James.
I'm so happy it happened to you.
Because I was about to give you a hard time, and then it happened for me too.
Hey, I'm just happy I actually have a faster speed phone than you.
Yeah, yours was like really quick. Yeah.
There we go. Tim,
all right, there we go. Awesome.
Okay. Don't do it.
Don't do it. Okay. Hello, everyone. We are Absolute Tabletop, and we are the makers of fine RPG products.
Yes.
From our tabletop to yours. We last year created Oath of the Frozen King, which was an adventure kit, which we also kickstarted. You may be familiar with that. And we recently kickstarted A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, and we're going to be talking about that today. So I think we'll start with just introducing ourselves, because I know not everyone knows who we are. And you can maybe say what you do at Absolute Tabletop. Sure. What is it that you say you do here?
What do you do on the Absolute Tabletop?
And also, you might be familiar with our other YouTube channel, so we can talk about that as well. So we'll go ahead and start over here with Tim.
Awesome. Yeah. So I am Tim. I am the art director here at Absolute Tabletop. And James and I are also part of Tabletop Terrors on YouTube.
Awesome. I'm Matt. I guess I'm the managing editor.
Sure.
Editor-in-chief.
EIC.
We keep adding new words at the beginning of our title.
I'm
the editor, but now you're the managing editor.
I'm the managing editor-in-chief. No,
assistant to the managing editor.
So I do a lot of the editing and proofreading of our books, and a lot of the writing as well. And I run the YouTube channel A Fistful of Dice, which you may also be familiar with. So,
can I give myself a cool title?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm Barker, and I am the CFO of Absolute Tabletop.
Yes.
I also run a YouTube channel, Be a Better Game Master, and come out with Be a Better Game Master products, which are system-agnostic books with immersion, setting, inspiration, a lot of really pretty adjectives, I think.
Yeah.
So.
And I'm James, like Tim said, the other half of Tabletop Terrors, and I am the guy at Absolute Tabletop who shaved his head and grew a beard.
That's your title.
That's my title.
Yeah, I like it.
The guy at... Yep.
Sometimes I answer your support questions. Sometimes someone else does.
So
I'm basically Mike Judge from that.
Yes, you are.
If things break, he fixes it.
It's true. In almost every case.
Exactly. So we've got a couple questions from Kickstarter. We've got some questions from Twitter, and we'll be answering your questions in the live chat. Feel free to put any questions there. If you want to talk specifically about A Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin, obviously that's great, but we're willing to talk about publishing in general, RPGs, the process, whatever you want to talk about. So just leave questions in the chat. And of course, let us know if you can hear us okay and all that. So,
sure. Yeah.
So on Kickstarter, and this actually, I think this is a question for James, because this is something that he's going to be working on.
What?
Hello. I wanted to make sure, once this is getting closer to release, will we be given the option to upgrade our pledge?
We will be. Even sooner than release. Our current projected release is next year.
Yes, May. Yeah,
next year. And certainly before then, hopefully before the end of this year, you will be able to go in and upgrade your pledge, which basically won't really matter until next year when it comes out. But yes, we are offering everyone that did back the ability to upgrade their pledge to nearly any level they want and get all of those perks.
So there you go.
And we had a surprising amount of people actually ask that. I was very surprised. We've had quite a few who are like, hey, listen, due to the time it came out or whatever, I was unable to do this financially, but, you know, et cetera. So I'm really excited about that. Cool. Thank you for asking.
Yeah, that's not something that we were really able to offer with Oath of the Frozen King.
No.
So it's important that we give people the chance to, if they got just a PDF and they want to spring for a physical copy, or they want to get the, you know, top tier where you get the map and everything.
Exactly.
It'd be cool to do.
You'll be.
Barker, do we have any live chat questions while I pull up the Twitter stuff?
We have one. We have one right now. If Dead Man's Guide was a flavor of ice cream, which flavor would it be?
It would be dismembered chocolate.
Dismembered chocolate. It'd be listen.
Which is
it would
essentially
be
just Rocky Road.
I was gonna say, listen, it would be a rocky road.
Oh, it's a Ben & Jerry's Rocky. It's like a Ben & Jerry's flavor with a fancy name, but it's just a mixture of a bunch of different things.
You spit on my arm with every consonant in that sentence.
If you want to know what it would really be,
on your consonant arm.
Think about your favorite flavor of ice cream. Take it out of the freezer, let it sit on the counter, deteriorate into something that you no longer can eat and can look at in a forlorn way, and that's the flavor it is.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good.
That's a good way to think about
Destroyed good ice cream.
Destroyed good ice cream.
Heyo.
So I think we've got some good Twitter questions here too.
Okay.
Sweet.
There was an event called Light Melt.
Light melt.
Oof.
That's when it took you a little bit longer to get home, and it melted in the car on the way over.
And when it freezes, it's just got this new shape on the outside
Yes,
of the container.
exactly.
It's never the same.
So this is from Rob on Twitter at Rob is his Twitter handle for the backer live stream. Oh, it's not a question, but just want you four to know how awesome you are and how much you mean to people. Keep kicking ass.
Oh, thanks.
I thought they were going to ask when it was. And that would have been kind of awkward.
Question for the backer live stream. When is it? Oh, well, you're missing it right now.
Rob, it's now.
Right now.
Now.
It's happening.
No, it's right now.
Now. It's also in a little bit. It's just ongoing.
It's ongoing. Genuinely, though, thank you.
Yeah.
We always like to turn that around. We take the compliment, we accept it, and then we say, also, thank you for being awesome and supporting us. There are more things than ever to devote your time to in this current day, and for you to devote your time to us, it's very flattering.
Yeah, there's a ton of content out there, ton of third-party content for D&D and other RPGs, and so it means a lot to have people supporting the stuff that we do and finding worth in it, running it at their tables, talking about it, and it's great.
That's a really good point, Tim, because we're kind of in a renaissance of RPGs and creation and Kickstarters and stuff like that.
Totally agree.
And so the fact that you have a link right now to this thing means we should thank you. So thank you.
Yes,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yep.
We write NSR books, New School Renaissance books.
New school Renaissance. James was just learning today what OSR was.
It's pretty awesome.
We were having a conversation about it.
Make sure you put your questions in the chat below.
One thing I wanted to talk about if we're waiting for some more questions is the reason why all four of us are together. For those of you that don't know, we don't all live close to each other.
We do not.
Tim and James live in Florida. Barker resides in New Mexico, and I live here in Washington. But we're all in Washington right now because we just had our second annual convention here in Tacoma called AtCon, Absolute Tabletop Convention. And about 50 nerds showed up. We gamed for 3 days. One of the days we were in an awesome tap room called Dystopian State here in Tacoma. One of the days we were at Point Defiance Park in this covered area in the middle of the forest doing gaming, and it was just amazing. It was so much fun.
And we had the Geek and Greet in a little spot called the Forum.
The Forum, yep.
Which was really awesome.
Yeah, so we basically got together on Friday night. Everyone met up, and we were just drinking and eating and getting to know each other. And then Saturday, the gaming kicked off. We gamed from like, what was it, noon to 9 or something, noon to 10.
Yeah.
And then on Sunday, it was like 10 to 9 or something. So just tons of games, people playing card games, board games, hankering for a nail. Runehammer was there, playtesting some games. So it was just,
awesome.
It was a really great time. And that's something that we're going to do every year. So we'll definitely have some more details on that soon.
I'm actually glad you brought it up because we are already planning next year.
Yeah, we had a meeting last night. Yeah.
And so, we're looking to see some of you there this coming probably July, but we'll see.
Yeah, most likely July. Yeah, so definitely keep an eye out for details on that.
Yes. I have a question. We have a question here. I don't have a question.
What's your
I
question?
have 0 questions.
Can you go to the bathroom? Yes, you can.
I have my head on a swivel.
Someone who can read questions to a live stream.
A naked ball So the question is from Kevin, who says, "Love using Oath. Can't wait to start exploring Dragongrin." I might rephrase the way you asked this. I'm not sure. This is a big, broad stroke question. Have you guys reskinned it for other genres yet? Which I imagine, in what ways will it be reskinnable for other worlds?
Oh, Dragongrin or Oath?
I think Dragongrin. Oh, maybe not. Maybe.
Oh, no, have you guys reskinned it for other genres yet? So we can answer both. We can answer both iterations of this question. Specifically for Oath of the Frozen King, it's what we call an adventure kit. We have another one coming out called Shadows over Drift Chapel, which if you're an Oath backer, you have access to, or no, if you're a Dragongrin backer, you have access to that preview.
Yep.
And Shadows over Drift Chapel is a completely different genre. It's set in a different world than Oath of the Frozen King. And it's more Lovecraftian, like flintlock fantasy. It's sort of Victorian colonial in nature, much more sort of horror inspired. So every adventure kit is going to be different. And we're working on other ones too that are all just vastly different from each other and offer something completely new to put on your table. So not all of them are going to be go into a dungeon and kill a thing.
Exactly.
Like they're all going to be different. So
and so I think one of the cool things about the kits we're coming up with is we're trying to figure out a unique identifier to it. Like not just, all right, how do we make another one of these, but something vastly different. Like
let's make it, but with fire. No.
Right.
yeah.
Like I was actually, I think all of us are like brainstorming different adventure kits and have notes for some. Like there's specifically one that right now the code name is Red Leaves of the Hunt. And the idea is that it's like a very Predator sort of situation where there's like one monster in the whole kit. And then basically it chases you around to different locations. And I just thought, I can tell you the thing that's tripped me up. If you put something in front of the players, they'll try to fight it.
Try to fight it. Exactly.
So, but I thought that would be a really cool, like, and what made me think to bring it up now is I want to have some cool chase mechanics or like different things like that where it's thematic narrative chase scenes and stuff. So I think all the adventure kits are going to have that. Like Gloam or Shadows Over Drift Chapel has some really cool new madness stuff and some new Flintlock stuff. So each one is going to have these sort of trimmings that make it unique. Yeah.
Well, and each one is totally sort of backwards compatible with other ones.
Yep.
So if you want to run Oath of the Frozen King in a more kind of Victorian colonial setting with like flintlocks and stuff, it's so easy to take stuff from Shadows Over Drift Chapel and apply it to Oath and stuff.
As easy as combining encounters and locations and people.
Yes.
Yeah. They're not just modular within the book, they're modular across the different books.
And I think we aim to keep it that way, and that's always kind of been on my mind when working on future adventure kits is like, hey, I want to make sure that this could be used in Oath or in Drift Chapel.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
and then that question in regards to Dragongrin, reskinning it for a different kind of world or a different genre, like, I don't know specifically what he's thinking, but could you take a Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin and run it in a different setting?
And Kevin has confirmed, correct Barker talking about Dragongrin.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
All right.
So I think specifically, more so than a lot of the lore of Dragongrin, one of the cool things is in the book, there are going to be a lot of sort of subsystems. There's the Arkan system that will be released to playtesters. There is the Infamy system.
Yep.
Depending on what you do in certain places, you'll get more noticed. There are a lot of things like that in the book that even if you were running like a cyberpunk game, you could still use, and they'll be vastly reskinnable in that sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is such a perfect answer. When writing this book, we wanted it to be something that you could literally ignore everything about Dragongrin, and it would still be a really useful book.
Yeah.
And so that's a design goal. So yeah, exactly what James is saying. So many things that you could just run in any world.
Yeah.
There's a question I have from Quad Gaming, and it's actually a really good question that I think. Do you want to say that louder for the microphone?
That's not going to stop.
He actually did.
It's not going to stop.
Do you need a drink of water? He did a prospector hiccup, an old timey prospector. Hiccup.
A bubble flew out of his mouth and started flowing up.
Come on.
Pop. And a skull and crossbones appeared in the mist.
And then he took another drink from his jug of moonshine. Yep, Triple X growler.
I'll tell you when I've had enough.
It's not moonshine. It's a growler that's themed after Triple X, the movie.
The drink of Xander Cage.
Triple X, State of the Union. That's what I'm drinking out of.
Triple X prospector.
He got it at a movie theater in Amsterdam.
State of the Union IPA.
And it's got just this two-tone, like Vin Diesel, like but you know that they used the picture from Pitch Black and nobody cares but us.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's not. And every time we see it, factoid trigger. That's not Xander Cage.
That's actually not the same character. Yeah. What's the actual question?
I lost it. Hold on.
No, we got it. We can move on.
It was somewhere in that.
Yeah.
Is it helpful to have new D&D players to participate in the play tests? Thinking of trying to get into the play test, but I am still new and my players are too.
Matt, you take this.
I would say it's probably more useful because, and not to say that feedback in a playtest from someone who knows games really well isn't helpful, because it absolutely is, but it's one kind of feedback. And specifically when you're playtesting something, especially a system like the Arkan system in Dragongrin, where you're unearthing relics from the past, we don't want that to just be something that veteran players can get use out of. We want it to be something that is exciting to new players, that they gravitate towards, that they see in the book and think, I want to do that. And so we want new players specifically to be playtesting this stuff because we want it to be accessible to people that don't necessarily have a ton of experience with RPGs.
I also feel like it's helpful for us to know what the problem is if there's a problem that needs to be fixed. And people who are veterans at role-playing are naturally inclined towards the fix. And so they might be like, oh, I think this should be this way, while new players will say, this is boring.
Exactly.
And that's like, oh, all right,
that's
let's
everything
make that
you need
boring.
to know. Exactly. Yep. Yeah, because experienced players tend to be a little bit game designy in their language, and that's not always helpful. It's more helpful to say this isn't fun enough, or it's not quick enough, or it's too hard to understand, or I feel like the Archons aren't powerful enough, stuff like that. And that's really like good actionable feedback, I feel like.
Right. Or just, I don't get this.
Yeah.
Or, I don't like this.
Right. Yeah.
Like,
yeah. Or like one of the best pieces of feedback we got on like an early version that we had kind of tossed out to some people was like, I don't know if this is for GMs or players.
Right.
That's a great piece of feedback because it's like, oh, we just need to make it more clear what pieces of this are intended for players and what pieces are intended for GMs.
Exactly.
So that's a great conversation to have.
Next question. Do you guys have any plans to allow other people to make their own adventure kits, or is the idea locked in as a copyright to AbTab? So first of all, are we in the Oath stream again? Is this Dead Man's Guide? No. Okay, so that's a good question. And so I'll answer the last question first. Is the idea locked in as a copyright to AbTab? Adventure kits are trademarked to AbTab. So you can't like build your own adventure kit and sell it to 1,000 people without getting a phone call from me. But no, but they're built in a way.
And if he got your number,
he's just gonna show up at your door with a baseball bat.
I'm going to be dropped off by a drone.
And he's going to ask if you want to go out and play baseball.
That's going to be a big drone.
You know what?
You guys want to reenact a Sandlot or?
Yeah.
You want to do?
I'll be the James Earl Jones.
You be the James Earl Jones. I'll be the baseball.
I'll be the dog.
All right.
I'll be all those kids doing the dip on the rides in the amusement park.
All right.
You got to sign me a lot of times, and then he's got to eat me real quick. And then you got to come in because I'm missing.
And go.
The thing about the adventure kits that make them pretty amazing, really amazing, in my opinion, is that you can already do that. You can already reskin them and change them however you want for your players.
Yeah.
And that involves, creating your own little roll tables. I think creating roll tables is actually one of the best or better exercises as a game master.
Yeah.
Because it teaches you how to make sure that if you have 6 items on a roll table, that they're all equally important.
Yeah.
Because if you ever try to, I'm going to make a random roll table for my players in this game, and then you're like, oh, but I really want it to be number 3. Instead of just saying, most people will be like, you know what, screw the roll table, we'll just make number 3 the thing.
Yeah.
Instead of doing that, make 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6 as cool as 3.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And that's like, it's more of a training thing. Yeah.
So yeah, exactly. But specifically, I really like what you're saying, which is the idea that just use that general template. If you like the way the adventure kit works, we've kind of drawn that circle and say, okay, well, make a location, make an encounter.
Yeah.
And then prep it like you would. And you can effectively make your own adventure kit.
Yeah. And we kind of modeled an adventure kit after the way we prep. And obviously we all prep different. But and now that the adventure kit is done and we've written a few, well, we've released one, but we're writing on a few. My prep more closely resembles an adventure kit. Form of, it's like I'm prepping NPCs, locations, encounters, and they don't necessarily connect to each other. I just sort of throw stuff in where I'm going to. So it's definitely a good way to prep if you want to prep like that, for sure. Yeah.
So as a wrap up to your question, and I've been looking at this camera this whole time. As a wrap up to your question, I'm going to head over to your place and we're going to play some baseball.
That sounds great. Yeah.
Evan M asks a question about Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin. Oh, God, I hope you guys are ready. Hold up.
Oh.
Hey.
How's Oath going?
Hey.
Will the Frozen King be in attendance?
He'll be the dead man. Any question is okay. Any question.
Yeah,
this is all fun.
Any question.
Evan asks, hi, guys. You talked about excavating relics of the Titans. Is there anything more you can tell us about that?
To be clear to you and Matt, if you guys hadn't seen it, Tim and I did a very long live stream that kind of went over a lot of the mechanics and stuff.
Yeah.
So where do they find that?
They don't find it anywhere yet. So soon, right?
Yeah, it's live on the Tabletop Terror channel.
Yeah.
Oh, the video. I'm sorry. I thought you meant the rules because we're eventually releasing it. I was like, hey guys, we didn't do that yet. So yes, if you want to see that video, I'm assuming. Oh, I see. I assume this was a person that saw that, but they probably didn't. Guys, I've just caught up. I hit the live button. I'm sorry, Evan.
He's been TiVoing through the video this whole time.
If you go to the Tabletop Terrors YouTube channel and go back probably just a couple of videos, we did a live stream that goes over, basically really goes in depth about what we're looking for
about an hour.
It's a great live stream.
I will give you the boilerplate and say that one of the things we wanted to do is make it so that Dragongrin did have evidence of powerful creatures that lived in it a long time ago. Creating a system that wasn't just magic items. And I think that was one of the main design goals, was being able to go through and find cool stuff that you can unearth. And it wasn't just like, oh, cool, +2 dagger. So
we're like, oh, this could make me invisible for 10 seconds.
Right. And so we tried to design a system where it was balanced so that you're not just like, oh, tripped over an Arkan. But also, when you do find it,
desert is lousy with Arkans.
It's ridiculous. So that is the design goal, is when you use this system, or as James mentioned before, you use this in any world where you want to feel that. It feels very different than just, oh, here's a roll table with a pile of magic items,
Yeah.
So it's a lot of cool things where you can combine smaller things into larger things. But it still keeps, I think, a very simple outlook of, hey, it's just a mini subsystem, nothing ridiculous where you'd have to do a bunch of homework to actually use the thing.
It's what we're internally calling a subsystem. And like we said, those things are going to be probably some of the most reskinnable outside of Dragongrin itself.
Yeah. I think my favorite part about the Arkans is that normally when you find a magic item, that's it. You have the magic item. But the Arkan system is like, you keep working on it.
Yeah.
It exists for a while, and it plays into the existing tool proficiencies of D&D 5th edition, which I feel like don't get enough love in a lot of third-party supplements, where it's like, if you're really good with tinker tools or leather maker tools or, wood carver or jeweler or whatever, you can mess around with these Arkans and do different things with them. And I really, really like that. It's like, okay, we're taking a short rest. All of a sudden, everyone's getting out their Arkans, like they're Tamagotchis, and they're all working on them.
So yeah, I think it's going to be really cool, and that will be the first thing we're going to play test.
Yeah.
So you as backers are going to have access to that early before we do that as a public play test, and so that'll be cool too, as you'll be able to get a first look at it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question from Cameron. What element in Dragongrin do you think will be the most original addition to the 5e multiverse? What element are you the most proud of so far? So two-part question. Can I throw in an idea?
I would
don't
love
really
to,
know
because it's difficult for me to see it. Probably I'm like this.
I feel like the Lords of Ash is the most original thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brought into the, and it's like the 5e multiverse, because I feel like it's a different way of showing regions in a campaign setting guide. I don't know how much you want to get into it right now, Tim, but I feel like the way that the regions are organized and developed.
You've already talked about the Lords of Ash for about 2 hours today, so why stop now?
The one thing I will say is we do have a lot of questions. Not to say you shouldn't spend time on this, but just so everyone knows, people are sending questions.
Yeah, and that's
we're doing good with that.
Cool.
So what I will say is
not
this.
Stretch. Not stretch.
What I will say is this.
Reverse Gumby.
I think that I think I can encompass the whole thing. Lords of Ash, everything is saying that we're writing this book not just as a source book, but we're looking through a lens of evil. Meaning, instead of saying, hey, it's going to be a region, and here's the government, and here's the population, and here's all that, what we're deciding to do is saying, okay, what bad guy rules it? What Lord of Ash is over this? Oh, okay, it's the Devourer. All right. Here's how the Devourer would ruin the government. Here's how the Devourer would mess with the population and, destroy the environment and all that sort of stuff.
What their minions would look like, how they're different from the others.
What horde do they summon and those sorts of things.
Yeah. And
I think that lens is what we decided to use for the whole book. So instead of it just being, here's some facts about evil stuff, it's like, no. Let's create a bunch of conflict in an evil world.
Yeah.
I think that's probably the most original thing, is that thematically tying it in in a way that you can use for prep, not just story.
Yeah, definitely.
Quad Gaming asks, what type of roll tables will we see in Dead Man's Guide? Loving roll tables right now helps me prep so much. All kinds.
All kinds of roll tables.
If you get to pick some roll tables.
Yeah, so something that we're doing in a Dead Man's Guide, it's a setting book kind of first. It's all about Dragongrin. And what that means is we tell you what ours is. So sort of to not necessarily answer the question directly, because like you said, a ton of roll tables. We couldn't probably even cover them all. We'd forget some. But the most important thing is we're giving you a lot of information, and in some cases saying this is the canon way it is.
Yeah.
But we're even offering a lot of roll tables for things that aren't necessarily like that may be different in your world, or you may want to change. Even going back to the example that we used, the Lords of Ash, we might say, hey, these are the Lords of Ash we have in our regions, for example. But it's set up so that you can roll to interchange them, and even roll to maybe make your own Lords of Ash or change exactly certain things about them. But you can always quickly refer to this is the one. So not only will there be a lot of roll tables, but there'll be things that decide stuff about your world, not necessarily just which trinket you find out of a list.
Bang.
Yeah.
Bang, bang, bang. Kapowie, kapowie, kapowie.
I work for
Does that answer the question? Do you guys want to?
Yeah, I just put it this way. If you've seen our other books, we love roll tables.
We love roll tables,
so
yeah.
We will probably be trying to squeeze more in than can fit.
Oh, yeah.
Like
when we're laying out a book and we find out there's a big blank space on a page, we fill it with a roll table.
Because none of us can draw.
Yes.
Next one. Okay, this is a good question from Dr. Professor Sir. Dr. Professor Sir asks, as players in Dragongrin, what do you think is going to be the most useful tool in a Dead Man's Guide? Same question for DMs.
So wow, this is kind of something where I don't want it to get too long of an answer, like James is saying, but
There's a lot to choose from.
So, I'll put it this way, because we've had a lot of really good conversations about the book as it takes sort of its final form, like Frieza. So
you eventually lost.
Yeah. We might have to workshop that.
We'll edit it in post.
Okay, killer.
Okay.
I think the most useful thing for players is that the way that the book is going to be structured, it's not just facts, but there's going to be a lot of stuff that you can use to tie yourself to the world. So one of the things that I think people were most excited about is that there are going to be some details if you want to choose a class like a druid, how to play a druid in Dragongrin.
Yeah.
Like, what does it mean to be a druid?
Right. We were even talking saying oh, in Dragongrin, you can play a druid, also often known as a veil walker. And just having cool things where like the rangers in Dragongrin, often referred to as wardens.
Yeah.
Flavoring it up just a little bit and then saying, if you want to play a ranger in this region, you'd probably do these sorts of things.
Exactly. Doing our best to make sure that it feels there's a word for that when you kind of thread right in. It's not anachronistic. What's that? Verisimilitude.
Yes.
Verisimilitude.
Verisimilitude. Verisimilitude.
Versailles.
I thought it was just me, but I'm glad it's not. But we're going for a lot of that where it's not difficult. We're not dumping a bunch of lore on you to say, okay, well, if you're a druid, you need to learn this, and this is their prayer, and this. But just little things to kind of flavor it so it feels Dragongrin.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and so even taking it to the backgrounds, as of now, until the book comes out, as we play test, even the backgrounds, where there's often flaws, bonds, traits, ideals, we've kind of stripped some of that away and made it so that there's actually a little table, and it's your tie to Dragongrin.
Yeah,
and it talks about how if you are a bounty hunter, what are the ways that your bounty hunter is tied to Dragongrin. So the whole character lens we're looking through is how are you directly related to the world specifically?
Yeah.
There's also like a really cool table of how your group met within Dragongrin.
Like to some degree stuff that I like to use in general when I play or when I prep or when I'm, making a game. So it's like, we want to give that to you. And in this case, it's because it's a Dragongrin book, but it's such a cool thing to use anyway.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And then to flip that for GMs, there's actually a whole section right now. It's towards the end of the book. It's called The Darkness of Dragongrin.
Yeah.
Which is like, hey, here's how to thematically run this world.
And I would say even more, in my opinion, in the regions, where the way the regions are set
Sure.
up are not to be a big lore dump of
Exactly.
This is the king and he ruled for 100 years and whatever. It's like a bunch of actionable stuff for GMs. We want it to be as inspirational as possible.
Yeah.
To find a section and go, oh, okay, I need a forest. Here's just cool stuff that might fit in a forest. Some of it will be Dragongrin centric, but I mean, you change a name here and a deity there, and you have it in your own world.
Yeah.
Or you put it right in Dragongrin.
Very, very good point.
Yeah, I was going to say a lot of campaign setting books can tend to read almost like history books, where it's like, you know, it's such a distant, it doesn't feel connected.
Agreed.
It feels like someone writing about a world that doesn't exist, because they are.
Right.
But we're intentionally writing things in a way that it's like, this is what the world is like now.
Yes.
We're not so concerned with what happened 1,000 years ago. We're concerned with what's happening right now in Dragongrin.
Yeah.
And it's written in such a way that it's like the regions, when you read them, are written with the knowledge that someone who lives there would have.
Yeah. Which
And
I love.
Yeah.
Really love that.
So it is going to feel a little bit more like this is a book written by somebody in Dragongrin,
Right.
living in that, in, you know,
usability.
yes.
Which sounds silly when you're talking about a campaign book.
Yeah.
But if I was describing Seattle to somebody, I wouldn't be like, well, you know, 50 years ago, 100 years ago, mother.
Yeah.
I'd be like, well, actually, last week they did this, and then in a month or two, this is going to open.
Yeah.
It's like from your personal point of view, like, oh
Right.
yeah, compared to my life experience, it's like this, and there are these types of people, and the buildings are kind of like this. It's not, they generally use this type of structure, and most of the buildings are this color. It's like,
Yeah.
no, what you see, not like
exactly.
a list of stuff.
Yeah.
It's
And
almost like a first person piece of fiction, a little bit in some of the writing.
Yeah.
It's almost
Yeah.
like, oh my God, like, and this has already been said in so many ways, but it's like someone in Dragongrin wrote this, which was the original framing device
Yeah.
that you approached with. You're like,
Yeah.
this is a dead man's guide.
Yeah.
yeah.
And we even talked about, you know, there will be some history in there, but our rule when writing it was you are not allowed to mention something that happened unless it affects right now.
Yes.
And by doing that, you don't have that whole first 3 chapters where it's a timeline that you'll never read and you know all that stuff. So,
Yeah. And another, I'm just going to throw in there really quick, another sort of rule that we established in our sort of like Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin Bible was don't just throw something out there without considering how it would result in a conflict.
Yep.
So don't just say, oh, there's, you know, the population is mostly elves, but there's some half elves and some humans. Say, you know, the population is elves and they tend to clash with the, you know, the minor population of half elves and humans. The half elves are sometimes cast out from the city completely.
Yeah.
Something like that. You know, it's like not only are we giving you information about the population of this place, but we're setting up a potential conflict and plot hook for GMs to be able to utilize and players to be able to think about in their backstories and all that kind of stuff. So yeah.
I have another question, and I'll touch on it first if that's all right, because I think I was just writing about this. I was just in this doc yesterday.
Yeah, you were.
The question is, what?
Yeah, you were.
Yeah, you were. You know what I meant.
You know what I mean.
What kind of mindset should players get into before setting out on a campaign in the world of Dragongrin? And the question I was asking myself is, in a world of conflict and blight, where do the heroes live? And there are many places that they would belong, but I imagine mostly underneath floorboards, above ceilings, hidden in places always hunted, always pursued by the forces of the Dismembered Lord and the Lords of Ash and all of these dark powers here in Dragongrin. That's the theme. Heroes aren't welcome. And it's more than heroes aren't welcome. I find that it's more like, no, heroes are murdered. Heroes are killed all the time. If you're a hero, you're going out of your by creating a character in Dragongrin, you're saying, no, I'm going to go out of my way to risk my own life to make this world just a little bit better, even if it doesn't change the whole of the setting into this, you know, place where light wins or even has a chance of winning.
Absolutely.
And there's actually, in the beginning of the book, there's a quick primer that's actually saying playing in Dragongrin, just to give you a very high level as a player or game master, like, here's what you're in for.
Yeah.
And in the Darkness of Dragongrin section, there's a tool that game masters can use called Let the Darkness Overtake You, which is essentially realistically playing gray morality and evil characters, and what that would look like in a world where sometimes you have to do unsavory things to survive, and,
Yes.
and et cetera. So we'll touch on a lot of that stuff and make sure you have things that you can use.
Yeah.
Fahad says, "Hey guys, I don't have a question. I'm just super hyped for this project. Thank you, and so are we." Barker, you should do a video on making roll tables. You could have ended that sentence at video.
This counts. This counts.
This
as a
count.
video.
This is the
This is
video.
the video.
Ah, we did it.
Still counts.
Dr. Professor Sir has a question
Dude.
for James and Tim. I don't know
you go.
what's the deal with these guys.
I don't know. What's the
Okay.
big deal with
Almost
James
like
and
Note to self: find out who James is.
How does it feel to have your brain baby grow up into a functioning brain adult?
So, and we actually, okay, so this is interesting. This will potentially be an interesting look into what that means. Because when Tim and I were brainstorming Dragongrin, it was very, very broad. And then we had a lot of stuff, but we both had very different ideas of what the book, or not even the book, sorry, the world. This was long before we even thought it would ever be a book.
Yeah.
What the world would be and what there might be in this region and adding this and changing that. And every time we'd talk about it, we would never really have a disagreement because we would be, oh yeah, that's cool. It was so nebulous and so like, we might be like, oh, this might be cooler, but almost always we would agree like, oh, okay, yeah, I like that. Even when we'd make videos for years. So I would say the biggest feeling it's very interesting to run into is actual disagreements of what it will actually finally be. Before, because it was so nebulous, kind of didn't matter if my idea differed even slightly from Tim's idea. But like you guys mentioned earlier, we were talking about Lords of Ash. We had not even a disagreement. Like I was just like, I think that this way is better, and Tim thought that way is better, and we have to land on one.
Right.
Let's talk about what we think of both. And that's probably like what it feels like for your book to become a teenager. It's like, oh, they're a kid, they're great. Oh, they're
That's
8 years
perfect.
old, they're kind of a pain
Oh
in the
my
ass.
God.
Yeah.
Oh man, now they're a teenager and they hate me, and we're having a fight.
And can I also just say that well, as a sidebar, the reason why I love working in this company where I think a lot of times it's difficult to collaborate with people is we had a meaningful, in-depth conversation where we had different viewpoints for about an hour.
Yeah.
And we talked it through and it didn't, debase itself into, well, I think that's dumb. We saw it through to the end.
Yeah.
And we rationally discussed the benefits of what it would mean to you, people with the book. And we talked through. And so I would say that has been the craziest thing is when you have to put this stuff into actual hard writing and then go back and go, do I agree with the thing I wrote?
Exactly.
Now that you understand this section and this has changed this, I think the coolest thing is watching things change drastically in some cases, but fit so much better than I ever would have imagined.
Yeah.
Exactly. Because the other side of that is sometimes something gets put in the book that I don't agree with that Tim likes, or vice versa, that Tim doesn't like that I'm like, oh, I really think it should be that way, which is a little bit weird, but is like, I mean, it's going to happen eventually. It's like there's going to be disagreements, but it's all kind of like, but what do we want ever, I can still disagree and see an idea and think, but that will be better.
Right. And I think it rounds out the book.
Yeah.
There are things that Barker would put in there that wouldn't be my first thought, or that Matt would put in there that I'd be like, oh, okay, I wouldn't have done that. But that means it's a better rounded book for players of all kinds.
Yeah.
And so I love that.
Yeah.
And it's all about. I found that it's the water takes the form of the glass, but in this case, like you're talking about, the glass has it's more symbiotic. It's almost like the world has become real now. So all the questions are getting easier and easier to answer.
Sure.
Because it's like we're not even talking about your book anymore. Sorry, guys, we're talking about the people of Dragongrin.
Yeah,
and the people
exactly. You're right. It becomes bigger than our imaginations, and it's like, no, this is a living thing now.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and we're all completely invested in it because this isn't just some sterile process of a world that isn't that doesn't exist yet. We game in this world,
Right?
like this is a game. This is a world that we play in and run games in, and that we watch people run and play games in. So there are going to be disagreements, but it's productive disagreement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It sharpens it.
Yes. Yeah.
So I wanted to bring something up, just brag on Barker. Basically quad gaming to derail the entire conversation. So
Do it.
All of y'all's videos are very inspirational, but Barker, your videos may be far apart but something about them just makes me think. Where Tim, James, and Matt give me ideas for my world. Barker makes me take those things and look at them in a way that I never would have. Imagine that feeling, but with books. Exactly what Tim was just saying. Like, the books wouldn't be the same without all of us, because disagreements or agreements or one-upsmanship or whatever, Barker's viewpoint that makes you think differently makes our books better, and Matt's viewpoint that makes you, ideas for your world, same idea. So yes, we agree that that's awesome.
This is a little bit, this is off topic. This is more in like advice for a potential publisher, like someone who wants to write their own books. Find other people. Find other people with that you can work with, and have hour-long meetings with them where you just hash stuff out, because when you're finished with the meeting, it's like the tank is full again. It's like a whole new project all over again, and you get that excitement that you felt right at the beginning in the middle of the project.
Yeah,
I think. A question from Martin. How well would Dragongrin fit in, say, a Harbinger campaign as a possible world in the universe?
That's a good question. I think it would it'd be interesting to do something like that.
Sure.
I don't know how it would work to just take Dragongrin and be like, oh, it's a moon in Harbinger.
Well, and see, I would say Dragongrin needs to be a little isolated. And the reason is because this dark power has imprisoned people here. Like, it's not easy to get out or in, per se.
Yeah.
But the regions, I think, can very easily become moons, or very easily become locations in the known orbits, or even a Star Wars campaign or stuff like that. It's, especially a Star Wars campaign, actually.
Yeah, so. Or like taking something like the Arkans system and making it like, we're retrieving artifacts from the Harbinger or some ruins on a derelict moon or something. It's like, that would be a really easy sort of one-to-one sort of thing.
Or like James said, infamy.
Yep, the infamy system.
The bones of that and going, hey, let's drop it in there.
How well can you avoid the gaze of the Seps because you're some mercenary ship flying around? That sort of thing.
A lot of the subsystems and stuff in the book will transfer really well to any type of campaign. Again, the content will mostly be, fantasy, like sort of evil as one fantasy. But if you're willing to change a few things and write a few things, it will absolutely be able to be used in a lot of different stuff.
Yes.
Yeah, and if you said to me right now, you have to run a Harbinger campaign in Dragongrin, what would you do right now? I would say it would be a colonist ship that comes, and it's just Dragongrin is long dead. And it's more of an exploratory campaign using everything but it's like all sci-fi, because then you're going into that like Geiger sort of kicking open doors, and there's crazy architecture and all that stuff.
That's so awesome. That's like Blade Runner world. Like,
And then I would throw Harbinger monsters and make it like a chunk of the Harbinger falls on it. Like,
oh my gosh.
Because the book, you could just flip through.
And it's like, there's the painted frescoes and stuff on the wall that you pull lore from Dragongrin of like, there was like really like lofty kind of vague myths about this dismembered lord.
There's some great tyrant ruled this world and other worlds. And
So that's how I would pull it.
But with aliens.
Both aliens.
Next question from Zemapronomicon. Question: how open are you guys to someone writing on Dragongrin, creating characters, writing short stories, and then publishing them, like FR and DR? Is that Forgotten Realms and Doctor Who?
I don't know.
Doctor
DR?
Strangelove. No. Dragon Rants. Dragon Lance.
Dragon. I don't know what DR is, but
Danger Rome. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's a good question.
So,
I
think that same answer is the kind of oath.
Yeah. So the most important thing is eventually we would love to see fiction in Dragongrin and in all of our worlds, and that is the sort of thing that we will, potentially some of us write. I know, we write the short stories and stuff.
Yeah.
But it is certainly something that we may eventually contract. We don't have any plans currently.
Yeah.
So for now, it is basically the same answer as Oath, which is we'd love to see that type of stuff, and we'd love for you to share it. And of course, it's completely fair to share it and tell people about Dragongrin as long as you don't sell it.
And that's the thing with Forgotten Realms is that that is a world that was created by Ed Greenwood that he then sold the license to for people to be able to do different things with, and then those people can give out licenses to authors to be able to do stuff. So we're not at the stage as a company where we're able to be like, here's how we license this world necessarily, But we love the idea of people throwing stories out there and talking about the world and creating characters and stuff like that. Like that's why we're writing about the world. We want people to be able to do that. But
it's likely just a matter of time, but we're not there yet.
But if somebody writes a novel in Dragongrin and starts to sell it, obviously that's a
I will show up and play baseball with you.
Parker will show up and play baseball with you.
Well, and I think, to give a specific example of why we're not there yet is because we're rewriting parts of the book. We're changing things. We're cells within cells interlinked. Where we're like, oh, you know what makes more sense? This thing that was here should actually be this thing over here now that we're looking at it 6-10 months later. And so polishing it up, doing rewrites, doing edits, sliding things around. So the first thing that most people have asked in the past, this is when we've released Copper Jackals or Tieflings. It's a disservice because you'll want to know what you're writing.
Yep.
So you have this awesome inspirational idea and you're like, hey, cool. So I've got this really awesome idea for battle. Where would this take place? And most of the time, like, I could kind of tell you, but it's very likely going to change.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
So I think, like James said, and like what Matt said, we can look more into that.
Yeah.
When this book is sitting on our shelves and you are all able to flip through.
Yeah.
And there's canonical stuff that you could lean on and extrapolate from.
Absolutely. Well, and I think that people worry sometimes about stepping on our toes with our worlds and stuff. If they want to put some ideas out there, write a post and put it on Facebook or a blog post or something like that. And the thing is like we create these worlds. They're not for us. We create them for other people.
Correct.
And as soon as we put something down on the page and we send it out, it is no longer ours. It belongs to everybody.
It does.
And so that's why we do that. And so if we create something and inspires you guys, like, run with it. Yeah. Run with that inspiration.
I think when we're ready to move forward into that ballpark, we will scream it from the mountaintops. And we'll let you know.
Yep.
Yeah.
And we have had discussions about it.
Yes.
It comes up often. So just know it's sometime probably in the future.
Really good content related question to the book from Erasmus Expeditions. What kind of new settings?
Hey, Jeremy.
Oh, hey man. Yeah. I'm really bad with the handles. What kind of new setting specific it's Jeremy. I'm not going to answer this. I'm going to skip it. Just kidding. What
we
kind
just
of
saw you? You could have asked us.
You could have asked us then. What kind of new setting specific mechanics for PC choices are being included, i.e., backgrounds, archetypes, sub races, trinkets?
Can I talk about
I really want you to.
All
I think the simple answer is yes.
Yes. So we are not going overboard. But this was a stretch goal of ours. No, with player options.
No. Prove it when the book's done.
Yeah, we'll see. We have some ideas for several new archetypes, so some different subclasses. One of which is a warlock subclass that is tied to
the Kawar.
The Kawar, which is
like the primordials.
Yeah, sort of the primordial. So it would be a primordial patron warlock that they get like claws and like scales, and they just get very like beastly, and they can do like a thunderous roar thing. So that's very cool. We have ideas for a bleak-born sorcerer subclass, which will be awesome. And I think we talked about maybe some sort of fighter subclass was on the table at one point.
It's like we have a whole list of docs because we have a lot of things that we want to play test.
Yeah,
and truly, whichever ones come out of the other end of the play test as winners will be the ones that we put in the final book. So like there was one that was like a blood druid.
Yes.
Just different things like that.
Yeah. Well, and as well, we're going to do some feats.
Yes.
And a handful of Dragongrin bleak-centric spells as well. So, and all of those will sort of tie into existing 5e mechanics and be usable in and out of Dragongrin. So if you want to turn the Kawar Warlock into a Dinosaur Warlock or a Tarask Warlock, it'd be very easy to use it somewhere else. So,
and then even for less in the vein of subclasses, but things like backgrounds, right? There's going to be backgrounds.
Backgrounds, yes.
And then there's the other thing that you touched on briefly, Tim, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the idea is we're including optional rules for replacing traits, bonds, flaws, and ideals.
We are.
Yeah.
Yep. So the basic idea is it's more about burdens and hopes in Dragongrin. So we thought it'd be cool if when you start as a Dragongrin character, you get a burden. That's sort of like, what's that thing that's, you know, maybe the monkey on your back right now.
Yeah, that's gonna make your life hard.
Right now as a player, which I love that as a game master. If you're like, oh, by the way, my burden is that I owe a lot of money to a marrow.
Yeah.
And then you have a hope, which I thought was really important because at its surface, Dragongrin is a world where evil has won. But truly, to me at least, the way I always see it is it's actually about hope and finding a reason to persist.
Yeah.
And points in the darkness. And so having a hope is kind of that thing that's like, well, why am I even doing this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why am I waking up every day? And so I think it's kind of cool as a player and a game master to be like, hey, here's my burden so that I can really put my thumb in that wound.
Yeah.
But then here's my hope so that every once in a while I can also let that sort of develop.
Yeah. Well, and true dark fantasy really isn't effective unless you have something to lose.
That's great.
And that's the thing with hope is like Dragongrin isn't Dragongrin unless you have something to lose. And that's why people keep fighting is because there is like the Dismembered Lord is not totally in control.
Exactly.
There are pockets of people who are resisting, and that's really important to get across in everything. So
I have a question, and the answer is yes. Now we're gonna. Now I'm gonna read the question.
Go ahead.
Is the content in the Dead Man's Guide gonna have any information or content from your other products, like the Tieflings of Dragongrin or Deep Vault?
it's a good question.
Barker, what's the answer?
Yes. Yeah.
It is.
Yeah.
I'm right now. I'm hoping Tim's not like.
No, it is. This to me, and I don't know how to say it other than to me, this is like Dragongrin 2.0.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff that we wrote that will have, you know what? The best way to look at it is like the Marvel Cinematic Universe. A lot of these characters retain the soul of what they are in the comics, but there's sort of a reimagining so that they fit within a bigger universe.
Yeah.
And I think that like Tieflings and all that stuff, you'll still see Villanavi and Vilox and Granok Thane. They're just going to be sharpened up a little bit.
They're going to be refined.
Refined a little bit.
Yeah. And actually, like, Drogus Dwarves is a big part of that supplement.
Yeah.
Deep Vault.
Yep.
And that has led to a whole, like, much larger conversation about cultures and what it means to be a part of a culture.
Yeah, because there's a Drogus Dwarf subrace in Deep Vault.
Yeah.
Playable subrace.
Yep.
But we're doing races completely different in a Dead
That's
Man's
something
Guide.
we should have mentioned about character options.
Yeah,
right now.
we totally. That's what I'm writing, and that's my fault.
Yeah.
But we have a new.
Get it together, Matt.
We have a new system called the Heritage System.
Yeah.
Basically, you don't get a race; you get a culture and a heritage. So it's sort of like your species, but also where you grew up, who raised you.
Yeah.
And so the cultures in Dragongrin, sort of out of necessity, different races are banding together in these different cultures. And you can have, the Drogus, who are mostly dwarves, but you don't have to be a dwarf to be a Drogus.
Correct. And we had a lot of conversations early on, and Matt, you're killing it. He's doing a really good job of writing it out. We wanted to make sure that the races didn't define the entirety of culture. It just didn't seem like it would work in a dark world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
again, one of those things that I personally feel like we like or implement in our own games, and we're like, well, we're writing a book, it's a system. Let's see how we can explore that in the context of this.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I love the fact that when you choose to be a Drogus, you could be a human.
Yeah.
Or, all the and it's going to make it so that the characters are easy to customize, but it's not also so much that you're like, okay, what am I doing?
Yeah, we're not, it's fairly simple, and you end up with the same kind of thing, but you kind of get a little more choice.
And some of you have been around for a while, you would have seen this as it was called Legacy in the old playtest. I mean, these are way old playtests.
Yeah.
Now we've reworked it, and it's the culture system and different things like that. So
and to jump back to the last question about those things being in Dragongrin, none of the content, or at least almost none of it, will be ported over to Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin.
Right.
But it is important to say that nothing that big has changed, but the Vilock and Granok Thane in the whole scope of Dragongrin are so small that they'll be mentioned briefly. And you'll know a little bit about them. But if you want to learn more about them, we're not going to flesh every race out as much as we did those in Dragongrin.
Yeah.
Right.
Traps and Tieflings. The question from Evan: are there tools, lore, etc. in the book that gives you and the players an option to run a game as villains working for the Dismembered Lord?
You sort of answered that a little bit ago.
I did. Yep.
Yeah.
We've touched on that with the Darkness of Dragongrin. In that little section as the Game Master. We also have a background. Specifically, I was just talking to Matt about this yesterday. The background is among the people, you sort of fly that flag of, hey, you know what? I'm swearing fealty to the Dismembered Lord.
Yeah.
And so we will have options to do it. I think that's also a cool place to have the infamy system work in.
Yeah.
Infamy doesn't mean you're known for being a good guy.
Right.
Exactly.
It just means you're infamous
You're known,
for a certain kind of behavior. So
Yeah.
that'll be a good way for the Game Master to give you consequences, good or bad,
Yeah.
to your deeds.
Because I think it's easy to say, well, we're going to be heroes in Dragongrin who are sort of struggling to survive. But I also want to run the campaign where you're a unit of Marrow who are going out and doing missions. Like, that would be amazing as well. So, yeah.
Exactly. And specifically the idea that not everyone in Dragongrin that isn't good is evil. Tim mentioned that also briefly earlier, where there's a lot of gray area because people morally know what's right or wrong, but then are in the in the place where, well, they have to comply or they'll die.
Right.
Or their family will be in trouble or whatever. So there's a lot of gray area that you'll also get to play in as well.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. Just real quick, we've gone about an hour, so do we want to do a couple more questions here?
Yeah, I think,
Okay,
and
cool.
actually we have one left written, but I think maybe if we can do one more, or do this one and then a wrap up.
Yeah, let's do that one and then sort of wrap things up and maybe last words and
kill it.
before I kill all of you.
I think it's great.
Cool. Right on.
What?
Nothing. Just go read the question.
Yeah.
Is that all I am to you, Matt? Just a question, Rita.
Is that all I am?
You're going to murder me.
So do you, this is really important to me. Do you guys have a lot of political elements, which I'm actually going to change to mean realism based on the examples you give in the book, i.e. inequities, racism, class differentials, etc. When you mentioned before the way the cultures, when you were talking about the way the cultures are being done, as a sucker for history and realism in my role-playing games, I want things to feel like they come from an actual planet out there in the stars, like an actual place that is grown naturally. I think that it would have to contain those elements that create the real factor in the setting.
Yeah.
I think that everyone in Dragongrin, though, is in the same boat. If they're underneath the thumb of the Dismembered Lord.
Yeah.
But if you want to dive into that, the inequalities, the class differentials is an important one. What's the difference between the rich and the poor? Is there a middle class in Dragongrin?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
No, that's all really good. I think, so the first thing I want to say is I agree with you completely, Barker, in that those are the biggest sources for conflict.
Yeah.
Historically and when you're writing fiction.
Yeah.
And so, there'll be plenty of that stuff, especially I think that there's going to be a lot of opportunity for that in the regions.
Yes.
And that's a way to make a region come to life, because the truth is, choose any country, choose your time period, and there are certain places that are more dangerous than others for people of a certain belief system or race. I will say this though, one of the things I don't even think has ever crossed our minds, you're not going to see any sort of commentary in the book.
Right.
There's not going to be like political. It's not going to be thinly veiled. Like,
yeah.
This is America.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it'll feel real, but it's an escapist book. I want you to have fun going into Dragongrin.
But to even give specific examples of the commentary that I've snuck in the book, to give specific examples of that,
full diatribes.
James is a Marx brother.
Yeah.
I'm the Groucho Marx.
He said it.
It's
the Red Scare.
So
I don't know what words mean though.
But specifically to specifically speak to that, one of my favorite things is that's what the heritage system and the way we're writing the regions really brings.
Right.
The idea that it's not just in this region people don't like Dragongrin. It's like no. Or like specifically the one that he's got me was like half elves. They're just like nobody likes them. I'm like, that never made sense to me.
Yeah.
But the idea that some regions will be like, hey, this type of, this culture is kind of looked down on.
Sure.
Because we make, the players make more choices about their own cultures and kind of flesh that out if you use those rules. you'll be able to interact with the regions, and the GM will be able to interact more with the regions of, oh, people that are more into the primordial side of thing, maybe druids, don't really fit in here.
Yeah.
And because there are kind of systems on both sides of that support that, it allows you to put it in your game more than just, oh, well, you're a Dragonborn. Well, you know, people don't see you a lot, so nobody talks to you. You know, which I think kind of is a little flat, but we give you the mechanics to prop up, like the ability to really have that political realism, like, you know, Barker was talking about.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
We were just talking a little bit about this, I think it was today or yesterday, where it was yesterday when we were talking about how, you know, someone from Innis will have a different perspective of the land of Sphere than someone from Talos. And to be able to put that in a sidebar, put that in the book of like, hey, this is what all the other places think of this one place, and how the opinions vary wildly, and the relationships might vary wildly at certain times.
Yeah, and I think that those little nuggets are really cool because you can take them or leave them. But it's fun as a player to give some high-level direction of like, hey, listen, people are sort of racist against dwarves here because the history of this particular region, you just be careful where you are at night. That's a cool kind of flavor thing that you could just literally ignore. Or one of the people in the party is a dwarf. Well, now you got yourself a whole different session. It's kind of cool stuff.
Awesome. Well, I think we should wrap it up here maybe and go down the line if anyone wants to say anything else. But thank you, everyone, for tuning in and for watching this. For people who are watching it live, for people who watch it later. We appreciate all of you backing us on Kickstarter. This book would not have been possible without your help, so we really appreciate it. And we're working really hard on it, and we hope you like it when it comes out next year.
Absolutely.
So, Tim, you want to say anything else?
Sure. Yeah, I was just going to say that you know, we are excited to start involving you in the playtesting because already these questions are very valuable to think, okay, well, here's what the players are thinking. Here's what the game masters are thinking. That sort of thing affects our final edits, our final versions of these sections and so on. And so we're excited to share some of these things with you. The Arkan system coming very soon. And then furthermore, I know one of the things we're going to play test next is the heritage system and the cultures and that kind of stuff. So you're going to be able to experience this at your table and tell us what you think, which is going to be really invaluable to make a book that is better than the four of us can make alone.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's going to help it too, where like you didn't just kickstart it and have us disappear for a year and then hand you a book.
Correct.
It's going to be a process involving all of you. So Parker?
I'm just more and more excited to write this book every single time we talk about it and meet it, or release this book and show people what this book is. And this is getting so redundant. I'm sorry, but it really is all because of you that we can do this. And thank you very much. I think this book is taking us to the next level as writers, as creators, as art direction, everything.
Yeah.
And so thank you all really very much.
Absolutely. James?
If for me, the thing I'm most excited about is that we are really looking at it through the lens of how players can use it, how DMs can use it. Very specifically putting the emphasis on that word, use it. Not enjoy it, not be inspired by it, but actually literally use it. And our original outlines and things we talked about for the book have changed so drastically. You know, even before we kickstarted it, have changed so much because of that feedback and because of all of that, and specifically because we want it to be so usable, and we want to do our best to cut down on anything that is just a little bit of text. You know, and like you said, Matt, that's not conflict, or it's not a mechanic that allows you to use it. So that's what I'm most excited about, is to write this book and see how we can apply those same sort of filters to writing our books in the future.
I love it, because here's the deal. If we're not making this a back and forth, if we're not writing this book up till the minute we have to send it off to the printer, we're not letting the book become as good as it needs to be. And so we are really excited to figure out what this final Dragongrin is going to look like, so that you can figure out what it looks like at your table.
Absolutely. So thank you, everyone. There are links down in the description. If you'd like to interact with us more and check out some of the awesome games that are being played in our community, there's a link down in the description to our Facebook group, which is very active. 5,000 people in there now, I think. There's also a link to our newsletter. We send out newsletters occasionally for stuff that we're working on, cool stuff we like sharing. And there's also links to pre-ordering the Dead Man's Guide to Dragongrin if you want to send that out to friends or whatever, if they're interested in getting involved. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to have another live stream happening for one of the other tiers, I believe.
Yep, it's the world building Q&A where we're going to basically... It's going to be really cool.
Yeah. Get into the nitty gritty, and we'll be scheduling that at a later date. So thank you, everyone, for tuning in. Take care and happy gaming all. This has been Absolute Tabletop signing off.